Thank you. I just unmuted the Zoom meeting. I did the same mistake we did yesterday. Anyway. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome to day 3. The topic is, we all love to talk about ourselves, right? మన గురించి మనం మాట్లాడాలంటే ఎంత ఇష్టమో. It's a small lag. We all love to talk about ourselves, right? ఒకరికి చెప్పాలంటే ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఉంటుందో. In fact, sometimes if somebody asks about ourselves, we say, అరే నువ్వు మధ్యలో మాట్లాడాలి, నన్ను చెప్పని. ఎంతూజియాజం ఎంత పీక్ లెవెల్స్ లో ఉంటుందంటే మన గురించి మనం మాట్లాడడానికి. సో మన గురించి మనం తెలుసుకోవడానికి ఇంకెంత ఎంతూజియాజం ఉండాలి, రైట్? సో టుడేస్ టాపిక్ ఇస్ వెరీ వెరీ ఫ్యాసినేటింగ్. Who am I? Sorry, lock the door. Somebody might come. Okay. Thank you for concern. Okay. So what is the answer to the question? Who am I? నేను ఎవరిని అంటే, wait. Yes, చెప్పండి. పేరు చెప్తారు, ఓకే. I'm Raju అని చెప్తారు, ఓకే. Suppose మిమ్మల్ని introduce yourself. Tell me about yourself. అంటే what will you tell? Name, education, sorry, native place, okay. Hobbies చెప్తారు, ఇంకా sorry, profession, okay. Family background, surname, okay, good. అంతేనా? మీ గురించి మీరు చెప్పుకోవాలంటే ఇంతేనా? ఇంకేం చెప్తారు? వాట్ ఎల్స్? ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్, రెజ్యూమే చెప్తారు బేసికలీ, ఓకే. సాలరీ రిక్వైర్మెంట్స్ చెప్తారు. Great. Great, fantastic. Likes and dislikes. Okay. All right. Fascinating. గురించి ఇంతేనా ఉన్నది? ఇంకేముంది బియాండ్ దిస్? వాట్ ఇస్ దేర్? సో నౌ ఇస్ ఇట్ ఇంట్రెస్టింగ్ ద టాపిక్? వై వి చోస్ దిస్? మన రెజ్యూమే, మన బయోడేటా గానేనా? ఇంకా అందులో ఏం కాలమ్స్ ఫిల్ చేయాలి? సో దిస్ ఇస్ ది ఆన్సర్. వెరీ ఫ్యాసినేటింగ్. చూడండి, there are 2 kinds of identities. One is temporary identity or relative identity. Second is, of course, real identity or permanent identity. Just like we have temporary happiness and relative happiness and real happiness, relative problems and real problems. So similarly, we have relative identities and real identities. Relative was nothing but temporary identities. Example, like you all mentioned, there are so many professions, right? So when you ask somebody, what do you do? Who are you? Some people say, I'm a doctor, I'm an engineer, I'm a teacher, I'm a scientist, I'm such and such, in many professions, correct? Everybody explain their profession. So nu evaru ante, in connection with the profession, they explain their identity. So suppose Kshitij unnadu. Kshitij is a student, occupation. Peddayaka, he, let's say, joins an engineer, as an engineer somewhere. Okay, so his identity has changed from student to engineer. So that means his identity as an engineer or as a student, is it relative or real? Ante temporary or permanent? So mana occupation ni mana identity ga gurtinchukunte, is that a temporary identity or a real identity, permanent identity? Temporary. Everybody agree? Okay. For example, we identify ourselves with our gender. Some people say, I'm male, some people say I am female, or in between, whatever. Right? Some people identify themselves with their nationalities. Okay, one question. Why is gender a temporary identity?
In the next step, might can change. It's not.
Yeah, it is true. Some people change. And it is not just a modern technique. This was being done since immemorial. In fact, there are scriptural evidences where personalities have changed genders either through curses or through your mystic processes or many other processes. Genders have changed. Right? Very interesting. So even gender is not your real identity, it's a temporary identity. Fascinating. Identity, nationalities. So many people want H1B. After that, green card. గ్రీన్ కార్డ్ కావాలంటే ఏం చేయాలి? చిలుకూరు బాలాజీకి 108 సార్లు ప్రదక్షిణ చేయాలి. సో ఈజ్ నోన్ as వీసా బాలాజీ. తెలుసా మీ అందరికి? వీసా బాలాజీ ఇస్ హిస్ నేమ్. ఏ వీసాలు ఇస్తారనమాట ఆయనకు, అదే పని, ఇంకా కూర్చొని ఎంబసీ అక్కర్లేదు. ఎనీవే, citizenship or your nationality is also not a permanent identity. That also is a temporary identity, correct? In fact, there are people who hold dual citizenship or more than one citizenships. So which means, how do you identify yourself? నేను ఎవరిని అని నేను గుర్తించుకోకపోతే ఇంకా నేను నాతోటి భగవంతుడికి మధ్యలో ఉన్న సంబంధాన్ని ఎలా తెలుసుకుంటాను? నేను ఎవరినో నాకే తెలియదు. కరెక్టే కదా? నేను ఎవరినో నాకే తెలియదు సరిగ్గా. What will I understand higher truths? That's what I'm getting to. Oh, then what about religion? Religion also temporary? Why? It's a big problem in society right now, correct? Big problem. People are changing their religions, left and right. We saw that in Search for Happiness also, how belief and faith fluctuates, which is why we said our understanding of God should be based on solid logical reasoning and scientific arguments. Fantastic. So all these that we saw just now are all temporary identities. Temporary identities means relative identities. Relative ante endante oka vastuvu ikkada unte, in connection with that my identity is established. Which means if I have father and mother, then I become their son. If I have the country India, then I become its citizen. If I have the religion Hinduism, then I become a Hindu. Right? So in connection with something, if I have a scientifically proven or scientific definition, medical definition law, if I have a male body, then I establish myself as a male. Correct? In connection with something, my identity is being defined. All these identities are in connection with something. A connection ledanukondi emoutundi, identity is no longer existing. Correct? Indian passport cancel chesi US passport vaste, you are no longer an Indian citizen. Correct? That is why this is temporary identity. All of these identities have one more common property. What is that? They are based on bodily identification. ఈ శరీరంతో సంబంధించిన గుర్తింపులు ఇవన్నీ. ఈ శరీరం ఎక్కడ నివసిస్తుంది, ఈ శరీరం ఏ ఉద్యోగం చేస్తుంది, అలాంటి గుర్తింపులే మనం ఇక్కడ చూస్తున్నాం అన్నమాట. That's why it's in connection with the body. So these are called bodily identifications or temporary identities. So therefore the question arises, am I this body? Because I am identifying everything around me with the body, correct? నేను ఎవరిని అంటే నా పేరు చెప్పారు. సో నా పేరు పెట్టింది దేనికి? శరీరానికి. సో నేను శరీరమా? Is that correct or not? What do you think? The silent question. I said I want to, not the body. Okay. As usual, strong answers from that side. Very good. Why? Acha, let's have a show of hands. How many of you think of the body? Great. You know that much. Fantastic. I love that combination.
This body is mine.
Good. Okay. Oh, you're saying this body is mine. Who is that mine?
Mine is me. Me, myself.
Who is that me? Right. So, which means somehow or the other, we have the feeling that there is something beyond the body. Correct? I think all of you know where you are getting to. Maybe we have the mind. Okay. Interesting. Some people think we have the mind. Any other answers?
Or soul, something like.
Okay. What is the soul? What is the mind? We'll get to it. So once again, instead of doing a guesswork, let's go with some scientific evidence. So let's look at some scientific evidence, some scientific research to back this question. Am I the body or no? Chuda. So a professor called John Pfeiffer, he produced a research called the human brain. ఆయన చేసిన రీసెర్చ్ మొత్తాన్ని ఈ బుక్ లో పబ్లిష్ చేశాను ఆయన. You know what he's saying? He says that your body does not contain a single one of the cells or molecules that it contained 7 years ago. దాని అర్థం ఏంటంటే every 7 years the body that you had before is no longer existing. కొత్త బాడీ వస్తుంది after every 7 years. కానీ body is changing continuously. But Prabhakar is Prabhakar, right? Correct? Correct kada? So Prabhakar is the same person. Mahesh is the same person. But Mahesh's body is changing. So is Mahesh the body? No, right? Am I the body? Obviously no. Scientific research is backing it. What is the value of our body? One scientist was very curious. ఈ శరీరం యొక్క విలువ ఏంటి అని. This is the scientist, Dr. Harry Monson. He is a professor of anatomy in Illinois College. ఈయన చెప్పిన థీసిస్ రీసెర్చ్ ఏంటంటే human body contains mostly water. Who wants to read this? Somebody read this? The lines.
In a 60 pounds person, there are calcium 5 ounce, phosphate 1.5 pounds, potassium 9 ounce, sulfur 6 ounce, sodium 6 ounce, magnesium 1 ounce, iron 1 ounce, copper 1 ounce, iodine 1 ounce.
Okay. So, okay, human body low, these are the chemicals and some other trace elements which are in minute quantities. These are the major elements, which is what he said in his research on average. So, మొత్తం కలిపి ఆయన చేసిన రీసెర్చ్ టైంలో he was estimating the worth of all these chemical compounds. దాదాపు 110 rupees అంట. So, is our body worth 110 rupees? Acha, then if somebody has a health problem and let's say he had to spend lakhs and lakhs of rupees for curing his body. And 110 రూపాయలే కదా, దాన్ని రిపేర్ చేయడానికి ఎందుకు లక్షలు ఖర్చు పెట్టడం? అంటే సెన్స్. ఇప్పుడు ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఈ డివైస్ ఉంది 10 kD, రిపేర్ చేయడానికి 500 kD అవుతుంది, ఖర్చు పెడతారా? మరి బాడీకి ఇంత ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ వస్తుంటే why unnecessarily pay so much? It's not worth that much. So he's saying only 110 rupees. That means the body is much more valuable than the little chemicals that it is composed of. there is something that is more valuable within the body than these chemicals. Correct? Correct? Fantastic. What is that which is the inside the body? That is called permanent identity. What is that thing? You know, when Thakurji is changing his bodies after every 7 years, but one personality who is going through that change, he is constant, right? What is that constant? What is that permanent identity? Let's look at that. The Shastra states that you are not the body, but you are spirit soul. Neevu shariram kaadu, neevu atma. Atma. Atma, I'll get into that later. But Atma in Sanskrit can refer to both the body, the mind, the intelligence, and the soul, the spirit soul. So we all know how Sanskrit, one word has so many meanings, right? You all know that? One word can have many meanings. So in Sanskrit, the word Atma can mean the body, mind, intelligence, and soul also. We'll get to that. How do we understand the identity of the spirit soul? Atma ante enti ani ela gurtinpu chesukovali? How do we realize the spirit soul? Well, so we'll look at some analogies. The famous parrot and cage analogy. You know the analogy? Please tell it.
Prabhuji,
Not Prabhuji,
sorry.
the devotees.
There is a person who has a cage and he has this parrot in a cage. He is busy cleaning the cage, but he does not feed the parrot inside the cage. So the parrot ultimately dies because he's taking care of the cage, but he's forgetting to feed the parrot.
Exactly.
So similarly, we are not feeding our soul, but we are busy feeding our body. So this will lead to a kind of
Dissatisfaction.
yeah.
Big lot of applause. So, అర్థమైంది అందరికీ analogy? Simple. మన దగ్గర ఒక కార్ ఉంది, Mercedes S class. ఓకే, ఫంటాస్టిక్ గా కార్ ని రోజు తుడుస్తున్నారు, రోజు పెట్రోల్ పోయిస్తున్నారు, చక్కగా మెయింటెనెన్స్ చేస్తున్నారు, డూయింగ్ ఎవ్రీథింగ్ సో నైస్లీ ఫర్ ద కార్. బట్ యు ఆర్ నాట్ ఈటింగ్ ఫుడ్. విల్ దట్ బి ఇనఫ్? సరే, కార్ పెట్రోల్ పోస్తుంటే మీరు పెట్రోల్ తాగుతారా? మీ భోజనం or your fuel is different for the car's fuel, correct? So we understand that the soul has different requirements from the body. This is one analogy of understanding what is the difference between body and spirit soul. Second analogy is apartment and resident. ఒక అపార్ట్మెంట్ లో ఉన్నప్పుడు ఒక వ్యక్తి ఎన్నో పనులు చేస్తుంటాడు, కరెక్టా? He is working, he is sleeping, he's cooking, all sorts of activities he's doing, and he is using all the objects within the apartment. But is he the apartment? He's staying in the apartment. He's utilizing the apartment. He is a resident of the apartment, but he is separate from the apartment, correct? So the spirit soul also is like that. The spirit soul is residing within the body. The body is like the apartment, but the spirit soul is the person. ఎవరు ఉంటున్నారు? ఆ టెనెంటే స్పిరిట్ సోల్, ఆత్మ. అది మనం. నేను అంటే నేను ఆత్మ. ఐఎమ్ ద టెనెంట్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ బాడీ. సో దిస్ ఇస్ ది అనాలజీ. We all saw the car and driver example, right? So there are some examples. The human body has the mouth to speak. Car has horn, correct? Human body has eyes to see. Car has headlights. Inkenti? The human body has heart to pump. The car has radiator to cool the car, correct? So the human body has hands and legs to move. What does the car have? So basically the human body is like a car for the spirit soul, for its journey of self-discovery throughout this universe. All right? But look at this. The car Can it move a single inch without the driver? Okay, but even for that you need intelligence, right? There is some control behind that, which means there is a automated driver. So driver is there. Whether you're physically doing it or intellectually doing it, doesn't matter. Driver is there, correct? So the car is not moving by itself. Who is moving the car? The body also does not move itself. Who is the driver of this vehicle called body? Exactly. Perfect. How many bodies do we have, by the way? Atma, Paramatma, okay. Sukshma Shariram, Stula Shariram, okay. Sukshma Shariram, Stula Shariram ante enti? Okay. Subtle mind. Okay. What else? That's it. Only 2 bodies? 3 bodies? 4 bodies? Only one body, enough?
Prabhuji, one is the material body and other is the soul.
Okay. What else? So everybody happy? How many bodies do you want?
One body is different.
One body is tough to maintain. But Krishna gave us, or God gave us 3 bodies. So the different categories of bodies are, one is the inferior material body and the other one is the superior spiritual body. So the gross body or Stula Shariram అని చెప్పారు కదా, that is the gross body. The gross body is made up of earth, water, fire, air and ether, which we call as Panchabhutans. The subtle body is made up of mind, intelligence and false ego. And the superior spiritual body is made up of, yes, the soul is made up of Satchidananda, which means it is eternity, knowledge and bliss. These are the properties or characteristics of the various bodies. Let's look at a deep dive. The gross material body is the outermost covering. Correct. Soul is who we are.
Doesn't categorize in body then?
On what basis?
Like body is.
Your conception of body until now only is the physical body that you are able to see with your material eyes. So your definition of body is what you are able to see or able to see in the mirror. But body means existence or covering or vehicle. So soul is our identity, and we'll get to that. Just hold on to that. Gross material body is basically made of the 5 elements, the Panchabhutas. Correct? Acha, is the gross material body temporary identity or permanent identity? Why? Keeps changing. Okay, great, fantastic. Subtle material body. This is very interesting to understand. Subtle ante entante సూక్ష్మం. ఉదాహరణ, గాలి. ఇక్కడ అందరికి గాలి ఉన్నట్టు అందరికి తెలుస్తుందా? Are we able to see air? But we are able to perceive it. We are able to feel it, exactly, or perceive it. So similarly, the subtle body cannot be seen with material vision, but you can perceive it through various means. Example, the mind. The mind primarily has 3 functions: thinking, feeling and willing. Thinking, feeling and willing. Intelligence basically has rationality and knowledge. Discrimination, basically. Rationality and discrimination. These are the functions of intelligence. False ego is very interesting. False ego ante ఏంటంటే basically I-ness. I అంటే the alphabet I. నేను అనే ఒక భావన ఉంది చూసారా, దాన్ని అహంకారం ఉంది. నాట్ అహంకారం, నిత్య అహంకారం. We'll see what is ahankaram later on, but this is nitya ahankaram, false ego. Ante enti? Why is it false? Because the false ego makes you understand or makes you believe that you are the temporary identity. That is why it is false. There are so many temporary identities that we create, right, with ourselves. Imagine ఒక ప్రొఫెషన్ తోనే మనకి ఇన్ని ఐడెంటిటీస్ ఉన్నాయి రెజ్యూమేలో. ఇయర్ బై ఇయర్ ఒక్కొక్క ఐడెంటిటీ ఇస్తాం. సో ఇమాజిన్ ద కియాటిక్ ఐడెంటిటీస్ దట్ వి అసోసియేట్ విత్, రైట్? మన శరీరం చుట్టూ ఏమేమి ఉన్నాయో అన్నిటితో మనం గుర్తిస్తాం. నా స్పీకర్, నా వాళ్ళు, నా టేబుల్, నా బెంచ్, నా సోఫా, నా అబ్బాయి. ఎగ్జాక్ట్లీ, నా నాన్న. మీ అండ్ మైండ్, అహం మమేతి సంస్కృతం అంటారు. మోహోయం అహం మమేతి, భాగవతం says, yes. Me and mine. So immediately, how are we falling in this illusion that all these temporary identities is what I am? That is the function of false ego. So what is true ego then, or real ego? That is the pure identity that is called Shuddha Sattva, which basically, or Vasudeva Sattva, which basically means your real identity or permanent identity. That is true ego or real ego. When that gets perverted with material inflection, that is called false ego. So we will look at the dynamics of how the soul, the intelligence, the mind, and the senses function together in 2 slides. Yeah, it's very, very tough, but very easy also to understand same time. I'll just define the spiritual body and then we'll get to that. That's the next slide. Spiritual body or soul. Mana common language lo atma antaru kada, adi spiritual body. Spiritual body is nothing but you yourself. నేను నన్ను రెఫర్ చేసుకుంటే that is the spirit. But the spirit also has form. But the form is not material like we perceive with our eyes. The form is made up of properties which are Satchit Ananda. Simple as that. Material world lo anni dento తయారు చేసుకొని ఉంటాయి, తయారు చేయబడతాయి, I mean to say, with the Panchabhutas, earth, water, fire, air, ether, correct? Similarly, ఈ పంచభూతాస్ అనేది material. So if you want something spiritual which is opposite of material, that means it will not have the matter in it, right? So it will be consisting of some other properties. What are those other properties? That is Satchit and Ananda. Ishvara Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakaranam. Brahma Samhita is stating. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. That is the spiritual body. Can I proceed? So now we'll understand some the identities or immunity, spirit, spiritual body, subtle body, and gross body. We'll understand with some analogies, some 3 analogies. 3-piece suit analogy. For example, బయట సూట్ వేసుకుంటారు, లోపల షర్ట్ ఉంటుంది. Shirt and suit are there, but Vyakti is Vyakti only. The person is the person. He changing his dresses every day. So he is different from the shirt and the suit, right? So the blazer is like the gross body, the shirt is like the subtle body, and the person who is actually wearing the suit is the spirit soul. Another example, the computer system analogy. For example, కంప్యూటర్ లో ఏమేమి ఉంటుంది? హార్డ్వేర్ ఉంటుంది, సాఫ్ట్వేర్ ఉంటుంది, యూజర్ ఉంటాడు, హూ ఇస్ యూజింగ్ హార్డ్వేర్ అండ్ సాఫ్ట్వేర్, కరెక్ట్? హార్డ్వేర్ అంటే ఏంటి మనం చూసేది మానిటర్, సిపియు, కీబోర్డ్, మౌస్ ఎక్సెట్రా ఎక్సెట్రా. కరెక్ట్? అచ్చా, మీ అందరి దగ్గర ఇప్పుడు కంప్యూటర్స్ చిన్నవి అయిపోయాయి అనుకోండి, ఇంత పెద్దది కాదు. సో మన చేతిలో ఉన్నది కూడా కంప్యూటర్. దిస్ ఇస్ నథింగ్ బట్ మొబైల్ ఫోన్. అందరి దగ్గర వాట్సాప్ ఉందా? కోర్స్. వాట్సాప్ ఫోన్ లో ఎక్కడ ఉంటుందండి? కింద ఉంటుందా, పైన ఉంటుందా, సైడ్ ఉంటుందా? ఎక్కడ ఉంటుంది? వేర్ డస్ ఇట్ ఎగ్జిస్ట్ ఇన్ ద ఫోన్? కానీ ఫిజికల్లీ ఎక్కడ ఉంటుంది? తెలియదు కదా? తెలియదు కదా? So it doesn't exist in the physical realm. That's what I'm trying to say. So the software that we know as such doesn't exist in the physical realm. The platform of existence is totally different altogether. Similarly, mind, intelligence, and false ego do not exist in the physical realm or physical platform as well. They exist in the subtle platform, sukshmamainatuvanti shariram. So that is why you cannot perceive the subtle body with your physical body, physical senses. Mind and మనం ఎలా చూస్తాం? అద్దంలో చూడలేం కదా. You can listen to the inner voice. Just sit still for 1 minute and you will hear a lot of noise in your head. That is the mind continuously barking. Acha, who is using the software and the hardware basically? Person, right? నాకు సపోజ్ ఇవాళ మొబైల్ వద్దు, కొత్త ఐఫోన్ వచ్చింది అని కొనుక్కున్నాను అనుకోండి. సో దట్ ఈస్ వై ఐ కెన్ చేంజ్ ద హార్డ్వేర్ అండ్ సాఫ్ట్వేర్. ఐ కెన్ అప్గ్రేడ్ ద సాఫ్ట్వేర్ ఆల్ ద టైమ్. హార్డ్వేర్ తో we keep changing almost every year or on a periodic basis. But the user is the same. Every day user is the same. So who is the user? Spirit. ఈ analogy the user is the spirit soul. The software is the subtle body, which composes of mind, intelligence, and false ego. And the hardware of the computer that we see physically is the gross body made of the Panchabhutas. Another very famous analogy, which I'm sure almost everybody knows, which is the chariot example. The famous chariot example. So there are 5 horses which are pulling the chariot, if you can see here, right? And how are the horses pulling the chariot? There are some ropes which are tied to the horses, correct? And the ropes are being controlled by one Saradi or charioteer. And who is actually enjoying the whole outcome of this benefit? The passenger, who is the spirit soul. So the horses are compared to senses or indriyas. The mind is compared to the reins or the ropes. And who is actually controlling the ropes and the horses? The intelligence. Intelligence. And who is actually enjoying the whole process of riding the chariot? The passenger or spirit soul. Right? Is that clear? This is from Katha Upanishad. Very, very famous analogy. Very famous. All right. So, soul is the innermost identity or your real permanent identity, which has external coverings. Like we discussed a few slides before, right? There are different kinds of identity. See, there is inferior material body and there is superior spiritual body. Spiritual body and Atma, soul and chepparu. But material coverings to the soul are gross and subtle body. So similarly, like you see that person in yellow, that is like the spirit soul. 3-piece suit analogy gurteshkondi. The soul has a covering of the shirt, which is like the subtle body, which is composing of mind, intelligence, and false ego. And on top of the subtle body, you have the gross body or the physical body, which is composing of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Is that somewhat clear? Any confusion between what gross body is, what subtle body is, and what the spirit soul is? Any questions so far? Revision? Okay. Maybe we'll have it from the participants. What is the gross body? You tell him, Raju Prabhu. Gross body and enti? Who wants to tell?
Gross body consists of two. One made of physical elements, made of fire. Panchbhutas we have just consists of subtle body also.
No.
Or,
Gross body.
well,
So there are two things. One is, sorry,
Gross body is the outer appearance.
inferior and superior. Inferior is basically consisting of two, gross and subtle body. Everybody has three bodies. One is inferior and superior categories. Inferior lo two types of bodies. One is gross and subtle. Gross body is made of Panchabhutas. What is the subtle body? It composes false seed. And what is the superior subtle body? Sorry, superior spiritual body? Spirit soul. Spirit soul is made of Satchidananda. Spirit soul is made of? Fantastic. One more revision. Gross body is made of? Fantastic. Subtle body is made of? Fantastic. And spirit soul is made of? Excellent. So three kinds of bodies all of us have. Clear? Very good. So let's look at the dynamics of how the body, mind, and intelligence work together. This will be a very, very interesting conversation. So pay attention. Shall we take a quick 2-minute break or shall we proceed? Shall we take a short break? Because it's a little heavy. Some bio break, water break, whatever is required.
class
Shall we start? Okay, start. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Welcome back, everybody. So, Suresh Garu, welcome also to you. Thank you for joining us. So, till now, just to summarize, what all did we discuss? How did we start the session and what all did we discuss? Who am I? Okay. We saw about identities. Okay. What are the different two categories of identities? What? Temporary identity and permanent identity. Okay. Which is also called as relative identity and real identity. Fantastic. All right. After that, sorry. And then we saw about three bodies. Anything else? Just kidding. Okay. So now let's look at the this hang out. This hang out. Sorry, actually, I don't know. Okay. So now we'll look at the body, mind, and intelligence dynamics. This is going to be very, very interesting and quite hilarious. So pay attention. There is a student preparing for his exams. And all of us know preparation for exams begin 10 days before the exam, correct? She is topper, I think. She is topper. 2 days before her, mere second topper. Exactly. Last night.